Hey everyone, welcome back. Michael here as always with another episode of the Street Smart Ventures podcast. I'm going to keep this intro super quick because I want maximum time, not only for myself, but for you as our listeners and audience, because we have a super special guest, Connor Archer. Connor, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Great to be here today.
And listen, we've got so much plan to talk about, but I'd love to kind of just give you the floor of tell us a little bit about yourself and really, really what, your story and what motivated you to start the Courageous Steps project.
Thanks, Michael. And again, pleasure to be here today. My story comes from a place of really having to learn how to navigate life in a world that was not normal for me at the time. So when I was 3 years old, I was diagnosed with then uh, low functioning autism, meaning that I couldn't talk, really didn't understand what was going on around me. And because of my parents and their dedication in finding a program that allowed me to receive all those services in one place, but also that gave me the chance to be included with typically developing peers of mine. That gave me the foundation that I needed at that time. And I credit that start to helping me get to where I am today. I wouldn't be doing all the work that I'm doing now. Not only through the Courageous Steps Project, but also through my advocacy work here in Maine and even beyond. It's truly that early intervention foundation that gave me all that I have been able to do today.
No, thank you so much. And I was remiss in only mentioning Courageous Steps Project in my brief little little starter for you, Connor, because you're right. You are when I think of you, you are mogul. Can I say that? Like that,
Yeah.
have your hands on a little of everything. And I think anyone who knows you and knows of you would agree with that. And
Yeah.
I just really appreciate because I think, in my own story, there's some overlap too, where because I got the support I needed in those early interventions, I also, was able to find my own way and thrive. Of course, not without obstacles. So I just, there's always, I think, in hearing your story, a lot of kinship and just in my own way. Could relate to certain parts of your story. So I always appreciate your transparency and vulnerability, just how you really connect with people and how it really drives you as the foundation to making a difference every day.
I appreciate that. And I think it goes back to just that importance of always being appreciative of those that got helped me, from teachers, peers, coaches, mentors, family. We are not who we are individually without the village of people in our lives. And everyone's village looks different.
Mhm.
Whether that village is small or large, but that village plays a big role as you continue to grow and both personally and professionally. And that village changes and that village evolves with time. And I'm just very thankful for that village. And anything that I can do to support other children, other young adults who need that same voice, I'm happy to do that because that's what I had, and I want to make sure that others have that same chance too.
Mm, incredible. So I'm really curious, Connor. Talking about that village, I just was like, I did not have this thought really prepared, but thinking about the village analogy, what do you think is missing from thinking about our nation as a village or just communities and states and do people feel like am I a part of this village, if that makes
Mm.
sense, and how would you encourage maybe a different way of seeing things?
Well, it's no secret today that there's a lot of challenges in our society. Um, and that's not unique. There's been other periods of time where there have been challenges in our world. It's just more profound because of the power of social media and how easy it is to be connected to everything and how easy it is to stay connected to everything, which can be hard to disconnect.
Mhm.
So it's very challenging to I think, form meaningful connections that allow for listening, seeing other viewpoints, but also trying to take a step back and understand all aspects of a viewpoint and a situation. I do a really good job of that every day, of trying to understand every side of things. At the end of the day, still may not agree, but I respect the viewpoint, or I respect maybe the thought process of why it got there. And we need more of that today. In our world, especially in a world that moves faster than ever, that has a hard time of shutting off in general. We need to take a second or a few moments to pause in our day to and even during a situation, to really understand and react appropriately. Because when you understand what's happening around you, you then can react in a way that's clear-headed, clear-minded, and that's strategic. And, I've had to learn that as a leader in significant ways. In any decision that I make, in any action that I take, it's not always easy to do that, but it's necessary in leading an organization, in leading a project, and in leading any effort, even just navigating your personal life, because that allows you to stay grounded and to really stay focused on the big picture.
Mm. Um, okay, I'm caught a little off guard, but in like the best way possible because
Yeah.
you're inspiring a few different thoughts, and I want to capture your knowledge and expertise as much as I can. Um, you're right. Knowing you pretty well, Connor, I was gonna make a joke. Oh, is strategy your middle name? Because you're right. You are always so good at analytical awareness, pros, cons, weighing that. I
Hmm.
kind of wanted to pivot a moment and be like, with your own personal, journey of
Yeah,
transition, and just like, how did
sure.
your own decision making in your personal life impact now your professional leadership, executive decision making? Is there any correlation, or am I totally off base in asking you that?
No, you're not, and I think it really speaks to an important. It speaks to how, for years, as a child, I was trained, almost trained through interventions to, react certain ways, or to handle certain situations certain ways. And if I didn't, react a certain way, it was deemed as of being, off base, or, out of line. And what I've had to learn, not only through growing myself personally, but also mentoring other, peers, other students younger than me, who are now high school graduates, going into, that big daunting world of ours of adulthood. It is There's no right or wrong way or one way, I should say, of handling certain situations. There are many, many ways to handle a situation and how to react. And that changes often because of the pace of our world. So for me, being able to, I think, you know, understand the importance of, you know, not being in a box and saying, this is the way to react. There are some situations that you just you can get all the training in the world that you want for it, but but then a situation comes up and you won't be prepared. You
Mhm.
won't be prepared for it. So that has really translated a lot, from, into my personal life, especially from my professional life learnings of now understanding that in business and in leading an organization, you can predict things as much as possible and put good systems in place. At the end of the day, there are situations that arise that you just can't predict, and that you have to navigate and then reevaluate and make adjustments. You can predict, you can predict what policies go into place, or what procedures. Policies and procedures are awesome, and that's what they, meant to really protect organizations, and we have them too. But also, there are situations that arise that, are very unique, and that are new, and that are based on just challenges that we, you know that we navigate every day. So I take a lot of that experience and apply that to my personal life to provide a little bit more breathing room in everything that I do. So that way it's not like, okay, I need to have this structured this way. It's more now of if it happens, great. If not, you know what?
Hmm.
Breathe, take a breath. We'll be good. We'll regroup and try again tomorrow or move forward tomorrow.
Mm. Um, And as you were sharing, Connor, I think for me, it made me think for a second about my own upbringing and life as I was getting the support I needed. And I think there were times I personally felt like, oh, like when you said outside the box, literally that should be like my life story. Like I always feel like I was outside the box, different.
Yeah.
And when I had my spontaneous reactions or just things going on, maybe at times felt like, oh, like let's rein Michael in, or the
Mhm.
evaluation, like it's always like kind of squashing either who I was or what I felt. So
Well, it's and Michael, it's like, we base a whole picture of a child on a 1 hour evaluation that
mhm,
the evaluator has not even met, for more or necessarily been in the space at different times of day when the child's tired, when they haven't eaten, the right meal, or when, you know, drop off. For example, we'll talk about this later. We run a preschool program, drop off for a child, pick up for a child. If there's a family event, if there's so many scenarios, and we base the whole performance sometimes on that one evaluation.
mhm,
And that's just totally wrong to do because you don't have the full picture. You don't even have a big slice of the pie.
mhm,
There are the human mind is so complex, and every child, especially for those living with autism, there's a wide spectrum. That spectrum is from, here to way above the screen, my hand there. And that spectrum, you just can't, that's why we always say every individual with, if you meet one individual with autism, you meet one. That's it, because everyone's unique. Everyone has, processes, things differently, understands the world differently. And it's just a great point that, we need to have also that flexibility and understanding that, approaches may need to be different, breaking things down may need to be different. So I know I'm getting off sidetrack, but you really just mentioned something that just triggered that, importance of
mhm.
that flexibility in my mind.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm going to bring it right back to you, I promise. But also, and following up, it made me think too of a couple different times where there was one time I remember very vividly. I was, I think, a junior in high school and did not know I was being evaluated. I was in the cafeteria, minding my
Hmm.
business, probably not having the best day. What I remember,
Uh-huh.
and, I'm a brain injury survivor. My
Yeah.
depression and anxiety really was very severe in the onset of middle school, high
Sure.
school, and really throughout my early 20s. Um, and I remember, I wasn't notified of being evaluated. Then I find out later in meetings, and then it's just I remember like the gut punch feeling of okay. And like you said, I felt like okay, so who I am as Michael is now boiled down to a whole list of what I'm not doing well at, and it's just like
Hmm.
me, like everything I'm not good at. And I think I'm all about accountability and transparency and personal growth and transformation. I think transformation is what you do, what I do, what so many of us do. But I think it just was like I actually still get a little angry about that, like all this time
Mm.
later. How much would an honest conversation have been if it's like, hey, Michael, like we would love to get to know you a little better. How would you feel about XYZ? That's and I'll leave it there for now. I want to get back to you.
Yeah.
I just want to, at least before I forgot, say like I think this is worth following up on and maybe diving a little deeper potentially.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just, to add that's why I think we're both very strength-based people, and really, don't focus on the weaknesses, focus on the strengths, and use the strengths to help, build your other skill sets like we all do in life.
Mhm,
All of us in life, are we have weaknesses and we have superpowers and strengths that make us
mhm,
who we are. And I
mhm,
think, as we both do, we mentor, students, young adults too now. to understand that, to embrace those strengths, to really use those strengths to impact others, and but to not shy away from, yeah, I'm not good at this, or saying I'm not good at this, or yeah, I struggle with this, and that's okay,
Hmm.
because I think it shows others that there's nothing to be ashamed of, that we struggle about things, or that we're not good at, numbers, or good at certain things. We live in a world today where, I think we are getting better about embracing that in certain areas. There's certainly always more work to do on, that, and more empowering we can do. But it just really, I think it just speaks to it speaks to my belief that, if we focus on the strengths, we're going to be pretty successful in anything that we do.
Hmm. So true. Um, I kind of want to go back to, I think, our chat on decision making, and just life lessons. Are you open to sharing maybe an unexpected lesson,
Yeah.
that you learned with courageous steps in your journey?
Oh, there's many lessons, many lessons, but one in particular, I think navigating, change in, just having to make a tough decision about, changing a program around, that was hard to do at first. It was hard to make that decision, and make a decision that really was, questioned at first, because of just, how long it had been since change was made. But also, it required a lot of shift in thinking, shift in way we did things, um, and just reorganization of, how we operate, that particular program. And, the tough part about being a leader is you're not, and I've had to learn this as I've gotten older, you're not always viewed, you're not going to make everyone happy. You're just not. And you're not going to make everyone happy in the moment. There are times where you're going to sit there and you're going to observe, and may come across as, um, neutral, or you know you not saying a thing. uh, I always, as I said earlier, want to make the best decision that I can for who we're supporting. And that decision always is data driven. It's always based on institutional knowledge and an understanding of what our partners want, what our supporters want, what our families need, and also just knowing what the big picture is.
Hmm.
I very so that moment was really a turning point for me in making more big picture decisions.
Hmm.
And that still is always a growing process, and there's growing pains with that all the time, and there's new situations that arise that throw a wrench in that. But I think just that moment, particularly when we had to make that change, was very significant for me. And that was during a time where we added a whole new leadership team, and went from just me running things to a whole team running things. So having to make that change, having to make those changes with a new team, or newly onboarded team, that was a challenge.
Hmm.
Especially for 12 years of a now 12 years of institutional knowledge, they had only months. So there was a lot of educating, and a lot of, empowering, and a lot of supporting that I had to do. And a lot of that, you know, um, just putting things into place. And that's not easy to do, especially, when you're a founder of an organization.
Mm. Um, I heard it in your voice, Connor, and I what came mentally to me was just sacrifice, a little bit like
Yeah.
sacrifice those tough, honest conversations, decisions, and
Yeah.
um, is it any easier now? Because it sounds like that was a really pivotal moment for you. Is that really one extra big decision? Is it any easier now that you kind of have proven yourself? Hey, like I've gotten through this humongous change, transformation, disruption, whatever you want to call it. Now going
Yeah.
forward gives you more confidence, and maybe this is a good lesson for our viewers.
I think it's still hard. It's all because every situation's different, and you and you run into new scenarios that are challenging to navigate, and what one person thinks is not the same way that you think necessarily, and being aligned um is takes significant commitment, and conversations, and having respectful conversations, and hearing all sides and viewpoints, and not reacting because of one thing, but looking at the big picture.
Mm,
And I do believe that, for me, it is easier. Um, and it'll continue to get easier. It just takes practice, like everything in life. You keep doing it, and you keep building that experience and knowledge, and you eventually get to the point where you know a little situation that is now that would have been a big one. If it came up 6 years ago, you're like, oh, we'll deal with that tomorrow, or that's nothing. Say this and you're done. But 6 years ago, I would have been, oh my god, what do we need to do here with this? Now I'm like, oh, that's come across my desk before. There's no need to react. There's simple email back, and we're good. So it's just experience. It's practicing. It's also, I think, as you grow too in life, your
mm,
perspective changes of, like, small things are really not are not big things at that point. They're really, you really then begin to appreciate that there are just certain things that you just don't, react to, and because you understand what truly is important in life, and that, and how the big picture really matters at that point.
hmm. I'm nodding because I'm like, man, like as you're talking, Connor, I'm like, how many years of my life did I spend stressing and worrying about things that felt like Mount Everest, a humongous mountain that now I can look
Yeah.
back through tough times or just growth and say, okay, this is really like a molehill, like not humongous. Take a deep breath. Um, I kind of want to take my next thought a few different ways.
Sure.
So, how do you, as CEO, someone who has your hands in so many things, how do you practice self care? Because I hear so much of
Oh,
you
yes.
have to make tons of decisions. Who do you lean on during tough times? Um, what you know, what? How do you balance? I think autonomy for yourself, autonomy for your team, empowering your team. I think that's coming a lot up for me lately is
Mhm.
autonomy and just ownership, and it's okay to take risks and just go forward. So would love your thoughts on that.
Well, self care is not easy in my role, especially when you're the founder of an organization that is facing a lot of growth right now, and when you still have a team that's developing, and you know requires a lot of that support, just you know collaborative support. Um, there's a lot demanded on you, especially for an organization that has a reach of, serving 21,000, Maine children, in 7 Maine counties, in our state, and with only a team of, a leadership team of five, and then also managing staff of, over 2 dozen, close to 200 dozen employees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you definitely, self care is hard to do. At times you have to carve time out in your day to have a notepad, write your lists down, but also to just jot thoughts, to look for opportunities, to really think about strategy, and what you want to do immediately, what you want to do long term, and how you're going to get there. And you have to have clear space to do that. You have to have focus to do that. You have to have good partners to get there. And you have to keep building those partnerships as you continue to move forward. That work never stops. So, but that does make it hard sometimes to separate work in certain moments from personal life, especially when you're passionate about the work as much as I am. So I've had to get better about that, especially over the past few years, in carving time out for even the small things of, you know, taking care of your dogs, taking care of my dogs, taking care of, watching, getting better about watching shows in the in the evening, tying my work more into other things without duplicating the work. So just combining the work together to make maximum impact instead of trying to do something different over here, which really relates to here as well. It's just we're using this to apply here. Uh, so I've had to be very strategic about that, and it's been a mindset shift because so much of my life it was got to work hard for everything you do. You got to do it. You got to push the limits. There's something in life that's is worth being said, that sometimes the best work in life is done through the most efficient way. And it may come across as, oh, that person's just taking a shortcut. Well, to do our best work, we have to be we have to maximize our what we have. And sometimes that means, yeah, you may find an efficient way to do it, or you may do it this way right now, come back to it, but you need to do it this way right now to get the job done. And sometimes it's not going to be it wouldn't be the way that I would have done it 10 years ago, but I've had to change the way that I do things in order to be a more sustainable leader and to be more responsive. Because the way that I did things when I first started, I would have spent hours doing something that now I spend minutes doing because of technology, because of systems, because of the world we live in. Whether it's formatting things, whether it's, responding to things. Like, I spent so much time doing those things and being so meticulous over it that the meticulousness of those things was not was probably good at the time, but now there are systems that can help with that. They cut the time down by 75%, if not more. So that's made me a better leader. It made me more productive, made me more streamlined, and it's given me more time in my day. And I think it just speaks to how leaders, can and should be using their tools, and not be uh, and to really recognize that their creative time, their strategic time is really very valuable. I'd say more valuable in moments, because that allows for that clear direction and to be implemented.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like drawing upon your well of reserve, so to speak, and it's so important because, like, honest, like I needed your counsel yesterday, Connor, because I didn't have like the best day yesterday, where I was feeling a
Yeah.
little on edge, and I think worrying about things. I can see now with, I think, some rest, a new day upon us. I'm like, oh, okay, like it'll be okay. Just
Yeah.
have
I
confidence in what I'm doing.
I'm right there with you. There are days where you worry about the whole house crashing down, and that happens. I mean, that's just, we're all human, and, especially if you're passionate about something, you protect it. You protect it with every ounce and fiber in you because you care for it, and, you've built it from the ground up. So for me, there are days that I worry about a lot of things, and a lot of it's not even like big things, because they'll be addressed the next day. So I have to then practice reminding
Mhm,
myself, be like, okay, we're gonna go take a walk today, or
mhm,
we're gonna go out and throw a ball, with the dogs, for a little bit. And the good thing about animals too is that, they distract you easily. When you look at them, they're just happy to see you. So, I could have the longest day in the world, and you know, they make me forget about it. I also make it a good intention to find different things to do when there are moments of a day, things like big things happening that are not fun to deal with. So like there are moments where I can't solve a problem in that moment because my mind is not clear to do that, and it's not productive for me to try to solve the problem in that moment because it could result in a wrong decision being made. So my rule of thumb is you step away from it, do something else that gets your creative juices going. That, whether it's brainstorming a new idea, designing, sketching out, new plan. I dabble a lot into, marketing, creative endeavors in our organization. future plans. Those things really re-energize me and make it so when I go back to the problem later to solve, I know what the solution is. I can make the decision quickly, and I can make it in a way that is more that's more purposeful, and that is really where we want to go. There are just some decisions that you just can't make in certain moments, and that's okay.
Mm,
And others you have to, of course. But if you can take your time making a decision, really think it out, and most importantly, you as a leader, be accountable to that. So that way, when you have to explain, if you have to, why you made the decision, you can confidently say, "This is why."
mm-hmm,
This is
mm-hmm,
why, no hesitation. You can be the voice, be the person confidently saying that. And then there's a level of respect there from that person who may be criticizing the decision, because then your confidence and your thought, your diligence is well respected. And people may not agree, but they respect the decision. And
mm-hmm,
that's where I think that's why we've been successful, is we have, because we've been thought out, diligent, really thinking about the quality of the decision that we make, and acknowledging that we're not going to always get it right, but we're going to continue building towards that quality and excellence in everything we do, and each decision that we make is a step that we take in the right direction. So
All right. So we've been chatting for over half an hour. Okay, I've got
yeah,
so much I want to ask you. So I'm going to dive right into it.
yeah,
Going back to decision making,
yeah,
and I love what you shared, Connor. As someone, those of you who know me, I am not a data expert. But I would love to hear your thoughts on, like, in decision making. We talked about making either a really quick decision, having an understanding of, hey, what really just deserves, yep, go with it. What deserves kind of maybe a pause, let me think about it, I'll get back to you. But I'm
yeah.
curious, how do you balance, quantitative, those numbers? Like, as CEO, how do you balance the numbers? How do you balance
Mm,
qualitative, the stories, and how do you balance that? Because honestly, I would love to. Like, this is like really informative for me, because I've always
yeah.
been more comfortable with stories and, like, hey, I want to hear you, but, like, just curious about your thoughts.
Well, decision making is not one way or the other. You take a lot of factors into consideration. Data driven decision making is certainly becoming more of a necessity as a organization now that we have growing programs. And I've that's been a mandate that I've made to our entire team in our organization to do that, partly because with funding changes and with the landscape of the nonprofit world, and just the changes economically, it's very it funders look for that, data driven, data points. They look for those results. And if I'm a donor, if I'm a partner, i
Mm-hmm.
i want I would want to ask that too. So we've really leaned in on that heavily, in especially later last year going into this year. That's been a huge focus of ours, and it's really opened the eyes of us to really know that our impact stretched even bigger than we even realized. Because when we pulled the numbers, when we pulled the data, when we looked at all of our programs, we knew that was there. But to see the numbers and see the magnitude of our impact, through whether it was locally through our Step Forward Center programs, or beyond, through our community support programs in 7 Maine counties, reaching, tens of thousands of Maine students and children annually, we saw, like, wow, we really are having a massive impact. And we didn't really think of it that way always, because we I think we're thinking of our local area, and that's great, but we had to think about the bigger area that we've supported around us. And that has opened up opportunities where now we're making decisions that are more driven based on, you know how what's our impact going to be, how can we make it sustainable, where can we maximize in the organization too. you don't make decisions just on data. You make it on also the structure that you have internally to handle it. So like you can have all the data in the world, but can it be executed? Can it be implemented? Do you have the financial capacity to do it? Do you have the operational capacity to do it? Does the team feel that they can execute? Is the emotional bandwidth there to do it? And that's very important because you know this work requires a lot of heart and passion.
Hmm.
So it is easy for your heartstrings to get tugged, and you really want to support this cause. And there are moments where, if the data supports it, you can do it. There
Hmm.
are other moments where you have to have, and especially if you have someone who brought it to you, had a personal story, you may have to, make the hard decision and play it neutral and say, I can't support that right now because the data doesn't support
Hmm.
that particular project, initiative, or endeavor. It doesn't mean it's no forever,
Hmm.
um, but that's what it is right now. That's hard to do. That's very hard to do in moments because you're not because we're all passionate about this work. These are people. These are people trying to do great things in their community, and we get tons of requests every year for supporting our schools, supporting our initiatives. We wish we could do more, and we're looking to do more with more partners. That takes time, but we've, I think, really, making a decision is not just in one way. It takes all those things into account. And, at the end of the day, the decision, a lot of those big ones come down to what I know and what, I feel the organization can do. And that's the reality, and that's the tough part about being a CEO. The buck stops with you at the end of the day, especially for major decisions. You're the one accountable. You're the one answering, even if you don't know why the decision was made in that moment. Your job is to figure out why and then come up with an answer. Sometimes very much on the fly, and you have to, and then you have to justify the decision to people, and sometimes put the fire out. And not to say we have those fires, often, but just to calm down, to calm down any potential suspicions, and to basically reset expectations. So not one way to do it, and I think it's just a lesson for any leader to know that you take all those things to considerations. You have to know what to do as what you want to do as well. Like if you don't know what you want to do, then um, good luck, with any decision. And most importantly, you need to have the information that all the information you want to make the decision in a clear, concise, and presentable way. Because that speaks preparation. This speaks to preparation, detail, and well thought out, intent as well of it.
Mm, mm. I jotted down a thought if we have time later, or
Yeah.
maybe it could be a follow up email because I want to take what we talked about earlier with our evaluation experience in school, but and in our therapy and different supports. But I love to now hone in on, you mentioned partnerships, so perfect segue. How do partnerships shape your strategy?
Oh, partnerships have transformed what we have done, especially in the past 2 years. So in the past 2 years for Courageous Steps, we have grown by 150.2% capacity wise, and that number really speaks to a couple of things. One, our new leadership team really coming in and being able to not only build new programs, but grow current ones. New partnerships now have allowed us to, expand to impact the 21,000 Maine, children, students through our resource advocacy programs, our wish list, giving programs, our, supply programs, our Step Forward Center programs. We would not be where we are without those partners, and those partners are essential, not only financially, but in a lot of cases, resource advisory wise, and they sit on advisory committees of ours. We're starting new ones as well. They're involved as volunteers, sounding boards, and those partnerships are essential. and those are evolving, and those will continue to evolve and grow every, every chance and every opportunity that arises. So we need partners in everything that we do. I think every organization, every business that is would be stupid not to
Mhm.
bring partners in, where it best aligned with the mission and vision. It has to align with the mission and vision and what you want to do, because I believe in the partnership. I want it to be beneficial for us, but I also want it to be beneficial for the partner as well. And I want them to feel the same way, vice versa. When you have that buy-in and that comfort to be able to have a conversation, be able to connect and have real conversations about impacts, data, but also just, small talk as well about the challenges in our state, in our country, that makes the partnership more valuable, because then you can think about, if we added this to the partnership, then we can expand here, we can go here, and we can justify that because of our results before, and what we would project if we did do the expansion, of our partnership here. And we also know that we can't do it alone. We don't have the capacity to do it alone. But we're a very small team. We have multiple hats we're wearing. People have said I wear 10 different hats. Probably true. But we need partners to do the work and sustain it in ways that we don't even know could happen in the next 10 years. We are predicting that through our strategic planning process, but those partners have been instrumental in that growth in just a small period of time. We've grown significantly in the past 2 years, and we wouldn't have had that growth without any of those partnerships that come our way, both from a financial point of view, but also from a community events, from fundraising,
Mhm.
from just advocacy, resource development, and even just being a part of our advisory panels and committees too.
Mm. Um, no, that's incredible. And, you're right. Partnerships are everything. To me, it's just a foundation of, like you said, having those honest conversations, which leads me into, I think, again, how partnerships shape strategy and vision. And I would
Yeah,
love to ask you, Connor, what is your vision? Maybe potentially you personally as just Connor, and maybe
yeah.
courageous steps the next year or 5 years or 10 years. Would love to hear your thoughts.
So I'll start with courageous steps first, and then move to my personal vision. But courageous steps wise, maximizing our capacity and building capacity is essential. We are continuing to grow, and with growth comes bigger responsibility, bigger obligations, and we have to grow for that. We have to continue building our foundation to do that. In order to capitalize on opportunities for the future, and to do so in a way that doesn't require as much high risk, because with any project you're taking risk. Every day that I do this job, in my job, I'm taking risk. I take risk just talking to certain people, because you've got to communicate in a way that uh, that doesn't come across as another program or in another viewpoint. Um, if I've learned in my work, how you communicate is sometimes more important than what you communicate, because there is so much. There's so many systems and so many programs that are complex, and in our organization, I use the term multifaceted, complex organization. And I say that for a reason. We have different programs with different licensures, different funding, different definitions. Education and healthcare don't get along together cleanly. They just don't. And I was saying that we really we have to navigate those conversations in ways that are um, just very carefully thought out. And there are times where you know you just have to navigate those accordingly. So anyway, that's going to be a big part of our strategy over the next 5 years. We actually are implementing a 5-year strategic plan this spring. In addition, expansion and building expansion in different avenues is a big priority of ours. We had an opportunity, this past fall that, was a really, I think great opportunity. But one of the things that I've always said in what any decision, any opportunity we take, it needs to be on our terms and our timeline, and it needs to be done with quality and excellence. And if the opportunity doesn't doesn't allow for that, then we don't go for it. We pivot and we look for the right fit, the right partners, the right structure that benefits the organization. Because in any big project and investment, you know, you're investing time, resources, energy. You want that expansion effort. You want that reach to benefit the foundation of the organization, not only fiscally, but also from a operational point of view. And you know, it's hard when you have to pass up on those things and you have to pivot, because you do put a lot of time into that. You put a lot of heart, and and certainly I've done that with many projects. But then you remember that those moments are great moments because you've done the work to lay the foundation and to have those conversations with people, so that way when you do get the right opportunity, you are that much more ready with the right, you've had those conversations, you've had the well thought out planning, and you also can think about things in new ways, because you're not, maybe you get new ideas, you get new voices at the table. So you know doing the expansion and really looking at maximization and building capacity in our organization are really the three pillars of our organization going forward. And that will guide us in every decision we make, and every decision I make. And you know eventually my goal is, I will, uh probably not in 10 years, but sooner, but eventually I'll want to step aside as CEO, still be a part of the organization, but bring in a new vision, and bring in a vision that can help move us forward to the next chapter. Because I have big plans too, and I have a vision that, of running continuing to grow a side business that I, started, where I consult, for, state agencies. I do certain projects, creative projects under there as well. And I want to travel to speak, more. I did a lot of that, a little, in 2023, 2024, took a little break from that. 2025, did a lot more in-state stuff. I'd like to get back to that more as well. And I think just, building a life that, you know, eventually I can be proud, not eventually, that I'm proud of now, and that I can continue to be proud of, and, continue to have an impact. But also, I think, have a little more time to me as well. I did, you use the word sacrifice. And there's been sacrifices that have been made to run this organization, and I I chose to make those sacrifices because I knew how important it was for me to build the organization to where it is today. But I think as you grow in life, your priorities change, your mindset changes, and you just you're you just can't do things the same way. And I've had to learn that, and I'm just excited for what Courageous Steps vision will be, and then how my vision can then evolve, outside of that, not only professionally in my personal life, but also in my personal life, because that matters a lot too.
Hmm. Well, I'll be eagerly excited, and I'm, a big fan of yours, Connor. So let's see. I'll be, it'll be great to see what happens for you for Courageous Steps in a year, 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think we're all about at Street Smart Ventures life design. And I want to hone in for a second that, there's been, as you shared throughout our whole conversation, many pivots, many changes. I'm sure nights where you couldn't sleep, decisions like mulling
Hmm.
over things, maybe some things
Yeah.
that were really easy. So I kind of want to ask you, like, do you have, because you've given us so much knowledge and wisdom, do you have any other advice for anyone who's listening on anyone in a leadership role? And I also say that I know we all are leaders in our own way too, but just
Yeah.
any advice on um, just your hard won lessons on leadership and decision making, and what's on your heart and mind right now.
Hard work has got me to where I am today. And I always believe that when you work hard and, and do things the right way, good things happen to you. They happen to you. You're able to then go and maximize opportunities. So, there's no substitute for that hard work, because that really allows you to do to eventually do the things you want to do. It doesn't come from, waiting for the magic, pill to fall out of the tree. You have to engage, you have to reach out, you have to have conversations, you have to think, and manage your time effectively and do all the things we talk about, as an individual, even from, when we talk about high school, what we do say that high school kids going into college, we say time management, we say, working hard, we say, doing those little things. Well, that applies to being a leader too. You're just doing that on a whole other level. And, I think more importantly, just embrace the embrace the role of being a leader. And there are just moments that will come up in life that you just can't predict, and you can hem and haw like, oh, I should have done this, should have done that, and you still, and naturally we, I think as humans do that, somewhat. In moments you just have to say, what, it is what it is, and we're here. What are we going to do now? We're here where we're at. We can't change. We can't go back and reverse time. There's no time machine on our end to do that. What are we going to do to solve the problem?
Mm-hmm.
And it may not be the way that, and may not be solved in that moment. It may take time. It may take some conversations. It may take, just sleeping on it, or really just carving out that time in a busy schedule to think about it. But
Mm-hmm.
being able to, I think, embrace the role, embrace the everyday challenges that come your way, and I think most importantly, surround yourself with incredible people. Surround yourself with incredible people in life, because we're, like I said, we're not who we are without the village of people, the connections, and even the individual partners in our lives. They're the ones that really can ground us at moments, that can be voices of reason, that can be help provide reassurances, and that can remind us that, like, oh, talking it out, I solved my problem because I talked it with, someone else, or I just, I was provided that space to do that. So, I think those are the three big lessons that I would really encourage any leader to just embrace, and apply in their everyday lives, because those will move mountains for you and move you in a direction that you can be proud of.
Mm-hmm. Uh, No, thank you so much, Connor. And I'm checking the time. I know you said you may have up to 20 minutes more or so. So I
Yeah,
want to, I'm putting it back on you. Like I have one kind of larger question for you, or if you have more
go
time,
ahead.
you can
Go
treat it
ahead.
like some bonus round stuff that I would love to kind of, pick your brain on.
Oh, go ahead.
Um, so how do you talking about, I think so much has been clearly a strength in partnerships and people. How do you balance support and accountability in your role, like if someone on your team is having a tougher time, or
Yeah.
if someone has something going on, or if you see things different? I know you've talked about those conversations, but how does that happen organizationally or within decision making, if that makes sense?
Well, first off, we run, we're here to do a job, and that's to serve our supporters. But we're human, and we have personal lives outside of work. And I've always been very diligent about valuing the importance of those moments in life, of both success and struggle. when there's a hard day or family event that happens, or good, or a high school graduation, ceremony, and you have to leave a little bit early to get to there. You know, Flexibility in that role, in that regard, has been very important for me as a leader and a boss for all of the time I've led Courageous Steps, even when I was just running our board before we had a team. So that's really important to have that compassion. That doesn't mean that you deviate away from what you're doing, because you still need to hold your people accountable to do the job that you're asking of them to do. If you're not meeting the standard, you're not meeting the standard, and we can be kind about that, but we have to figure out a way to meet the standard. We are here, like I said, to do a job. That job is for our partners, for our mission and vision, for all those that donate their money and their $50 or whatever that donation is. That is very meaningful to them, and they want to know that that $50 goes to school supplies, goes to support support an upgraded or step forward center, and that it is being maximized to the best possible degree. I think about those things constantly, and those are the and those and whenever I always remind our team about that, like our donors, that $50, that may be all they can donate in a single year. And we know right now there's a lot of challenges that people are just facing cost wise, and I really, uh, I really, balancing that support and accountability, that can be a struggle sometimes, because you have to sometimes in hard moments say, yeah, we're not meeting the standard. We're just not. We need to figure out how to get there. And
Mm.
whatever we need to do, we need to do it. You can be kind about that, and not come across as being arrogant. You just have to go back to the mission, why you're saying it. It's always reminding yourself it's in the best interest of the mission and vision. And that's how I make every decision. It's not about me. It's not about my own personal feelings about it. It's about what I believe is best for the mission and vision, based on all of the other factors. And um, that's how I think, navigate support, balancing support, but also making sure that everyone in our organization, from those providing direct care support to leaders, are held accountable, and how the leaders supporting those individuals are accountable, but also I think understanding, like I said, that life happens, and sometimes when it rains, it pours, and you've gotta embrace that, and
Mhm.
do your best to navigate in those moments, and then you reevaluate and you adjust as needed.
Mm-hmm. Because the reason I asked you that, Connor, was I've been thinking a lot about culture of different organizations, and I've been in some where there was this unspoken culture of, oh, you can't ever give feedback, or like I could never question anything, or any feedback I was given was in a
Mm-hmm.
maybe an unkind way. And so I really appreciate anyone who leads an organization where you are balancing accountability and support. And I think,
Yeah,
that's something that, I've been thinking a lot about, this is a job, a business. We're there, like, as you said, to have those measurable outcomes. But there's something very inspiring about a culture that doesn't mean it's perfection. It's we're going to make mistakes, and
yeah.
we can just, if someone felt a professional relationship was fractured, you can go about repairing it and go on as needed. Because I feel like it's like was those moments where I've seen teams fracture, where like if things were not addressed. So I appreciate how you clearly lead with the vision of accountability and support hand in hand.
And I've not always been the strongest at balancing that. I think as you grow, you've become, as I've grown, I've become more. Um, I think just the demand for accountability has been more there, because I would always be the first one to say, I'll take care of it. If you need to go do this, I'll take care of it. Needs to go do that. that is not a healthy expectation to set either, because then it's a habit for the person to say, oh, I can just go ask for this and I'll get it. There are certain moments where I'm like, can't give you that. I can give you in other moments, not this moment. You need to do this, and or a situation comes up, and yeah, you just can't provide that support in that moment, or that defers to someone else. But it's not equal, and you have to just balance that line effectively, and building teams and collaborating. There's no it's not it's always a work in progress, and because you have different understandings potentially. There's a lot that happens, especially a small organization every day. My email box fills up faster than ever, so like I'm forwarding, passing things along, and just speeds of processing and speeds of understanding are different. I've been told that I'm very good at not only doing busy work, but then also looking up and while I'm typing, thinking about the big picture. Not everyone has that strength, and that's okay. That's okay. It's just knowing how you maximize. It's knowing how you, I think, balance that support and accountability, so that way you can, really get to the place where you're saying we are meeting the standard consistently on everything that we're doing, and that just goes back to our what we're trying to do every day.
Mm. Um, Thank you for that, by the way. Connor, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Pivoting just a few more questions. I appreciate you extending your time for a little bit. Are you open to sharing maybe a memorable, story or moment you've had or courageous steps have had with, a family or a young person that
Yeah.
really has stayed with you?
Oh, there are many. And I think I'll share more of a recent one. And as much and it's really simple, but it just demonstrates what small things can do to really impact what we impact a family. We had a family reached out to us, looking for a inclusive program at an early childhood center. They had gone through a system and processes that was very challenging to navigate, and state bureaucratic systems are very challenging to navigate. It's no secret. And a lot of systems are outdated, archaic, and are still catching up with the times. It became very clear that the information that the family was given was not really either accurate, or was being very was being communicated in a very poor way, and not broken down to a language that made sense for them, or steps that made sense for them, but instead uh, were being put into different rabbit holes, and time passes and they're still waiting on a wait list. And I looked the family in the eye and I said, we will, I think we had a 10-minute conversation. I think we had a conversation and we said, we got you now. We got you now. We're going to get this through. And I think we had a 10-minute conversation with the local agency. And it was about asking the right questions, about asking, getting wording it in the right way. And we were able to get the information that we needed in 10 minutes. And the mom was amazed. The family was amazed, like, how did you do that? I said, it's knowing the right connections you have, but it's also understanding. It's also because we had the understanding of what, um, the family needed. I think seeing the family as grateful as they've been for our support, and the progress that we've seen in the child, has meant the world to see in just a short amount of time, and that has allowed for and we've seen that with other kids too. I have the pleasure of hearing from families and staying connected with families, seeing how they're doing, through our programs. And I of course, I'm big picture, so I'm not in the day-to-day side on every program, but I run into families when I go and visit our center, and I recognize their names. I remember their names. I remember the requests that I put in, or that I fought for their their authorizations or whatever. I was the one that pushed for that because I saw something in that child that was worth fighting for. And I see, and that's how I approach everything that I do. I see what the potential is in that child with the right supports they have in place
Mhm.
to do that. And a lot of families don't have that, that champion on their side to get them through that obstacle. And that's what I want us to be. I want us to be that champion for families. And by doing that, then we inspire families. We empower them and they want to learn how they can do it, inspire others. So that's what we try to do every day as well. And that's just one example. There are many others we do that for, not only through our Step Forward Center, but through just our resource and advocacy efforts
Mhm.
too.
Mhm. Um, I may have to have you back on here, Connor, because you're giving me too many good things to work with. As we're wrapping up, I mean, so many things. That's been coming up a lot for us. Is just champions, building champions, helping people recognize we all can be champions. And again, going back to early on in our chat, being strength based, and how do you approach that? Because I think you and I and our organizations, um, we do operate and lead with connection and curiosity and not
Yeah.
complacency. And I'm sure it's really frustrating when you see that complacency. And I'm sure that could be a whole nother hour conversation, Connor. But I just really appreciate how, in that moment, you were the messenger who made things come alive and made that connection for that family and that child. So
the
thank you for sharing that.
the excuse of, oh, it's the way it's been for 20 years, we're not changing it, that is a horrible excuse that
Mhm.
I do not like hearing at all at, at most times. And it's because in a world that we live in today, you have to adapt and change. Businesses do it. So why aren't state agencies doing it?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
better it's better than it's been, but you have to push for that. You have to advocate. You have to be the leader in that moment to basically be professional but direct and say, this is not working. We're not meeting the standard and we need to do better to meet the standard. It takes time. You're dealing with systems that are you're not manpower, don't have enough manpower, that lack certain resources at 100%. But also, too, there are better ways to do things without having to add more personnel, add more manpower. It's just systems. It's just process, and it's
Mhm.
just really, trying to, I think, also form those connections. So yes, I can't tell you how many times I cringe when I hear, oh, we've done it this way for this many years. We're not going to change it. Let's think. Well, what does this information now help you make the decision? And I'm like, oh, it does. Great. So let's get to a solution now. So I
Mhm.
think that's really been impactful too, and I think it shows that I think we have good people doing great work in the state of Maine. I know we have great people. Um, Systems, when you have systems that don't work efficiently, it bogs everyone down. And I think that's what we see, and that's why I continue to, not only support families locally, but support the state efforts as well to improve those systems because those are essential too.
Mm. No, thank you so much. Second to last question, Connor.
Okay.
I would love to. I really want to hear this one, and this again could be a whole nother chat. Um, what trends are you seeing from the families and young people you're supporting? I would just be curious, in
Yeah.
just a minute or two, where more attention is needed, what's working, what are the commonalities, and, just the uniqueness of, yes, everyone's individual, but just what trends are you seeing? And how do you think this can inform, really our whole networks of just where we
Yeah.
need to focus our time?
Well, you know as well as I do, when a child doesn't get the essentials they need at home, it makes it very difficult for services and programs to be implemented for a child. It just does. They can't. It makes it hard for them to access early childhood programs, access home and community programs, because they're either getting sick, they're either not getting enough, to eat, and we know when you're not, don't have a full, stomach, full belly. Um, you're not able to focus, you're not able to regulate, and I think there's a lot of great organizations doing that work, and we're very fortunate that we are partners with those organizations, and also try to do some of those things on a smaller scale on our end through our Bright Path initiative that we started last February, March timeframe. So, we're very, those are definitely big areas that we look at, and try to really bridge those gaps in our own way that we can. We don't have the biggest resource pool in the world to do that. So we really lean in on partnerships where we can with other organizations that do that. The other thing too is that, we live in a time right now where there's a lot of, attention on services, especially in our state, where, services for community-based services are getting scrutinized
Hmm.
by public officials. It's in the news nationally. It's also in the news heavily in our state. And while some of that, while some may be true in, I think there are certain situations where, there are um, certainly uh, services that are not used appropriately because, that happens all the time. It's unfair to many children and families that desperately need those services for their child, um, and just because it's more invisible in certain ways compared to others doesn't mean that they still don't need it. There, like I said, autism is a wide spectrum. So, you may not, you may not, have you may not be like low functioning, but you're still here, and you're still worth, and that intervention is still needed. So, I think for me, monitoring the status of what is happening there, and not getting and making sure that our families and our children have their voice heard in that process, and that they're represented is important to me. Um, that means that is probably the most important priority, for me from an advocacy point of view in education, healthcare, whatever that means, whatever it is, that that has to be an important priority because um, there are big questions about, services being scaled back or not um, delivered for some families, and that could be devastating. We've been very lucky on our end because of the size of our program that we've been, really, we haven't seen that impact. Um, but I think, those are big questions that, require advocacy, that require talking to delegation, that require helping, having delegations understand why funding is important for these programs.
Hmm.
And also, people love a good story. People love an incredible story of, success, but also like um, on our end, I'm amazed by just the like for me, we're very diligent on everything we do, process wise, accountability wise. We make sure that everything is double, triple checked. And if we need to fix a process, we do that. We don't let things slip by. And if we do, well, we catch it at a certain point and we fix it. And we fix it immediately. But we're very good about being very diligent about how we do things operationally with our things. So that's really been a lot of my attention, and really trying to, I think, monitor that as well, because that matters for our programming, and
Hmm.
impacts our ability to be able to reach more children and families. And I think just in general, the world is just very, challenge. It just has a lot of challenges that we are trying to meet, and we can't do it all alone. We need our partners to help, and we need other organizations to support that as well. But we'll do what we can, and that's all we can do.
Hmm. Well said. And being respectful of your time, Connor. I'd love to just, as a closing thought on my end, what legacy do you hope to leave? Does Courageous Steps hope to leave? I know you've talked a bit about that, but I'd love to just, again, the floor is yours, Connor.
I hope for me with Courageous Steps that we leave a legacy of having a transformational impact on children, young adults. and programs in the region, in our state, and even beyond for, well beyond my lifetime. And I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about the plans we have to really grow our capacity, grow our ability to be able to really take big steps in all of our programs, so that way, all the needs that continue to arise, we can meet those in significant ways, um, well beyond when I, even more than when I, um, ever, ran this organization now. We'd love to be able to support more wish list grants, more, have a bigger, expand our programming to all Maine counties, New Hampshire, even, we'd love to be able to go into so many different directions. We'll get there with time. But that's having a transformational impact in anything we do with quality and excellence at the forefront. And there is nothing that will compromise that. We will make sure that is the first and most important thing that drives our growth. It's that quality and excellence standard.
Mm. Well, Connor, it's been an honor to have this conversation with you. Before we close out, where can people connect with you, Connor? Maybe personally, where can people connect with the Courageous Steps Project?
Yeah. So you can contact me a few ways. You can visit our website, thecourageousstepsproject.org, and would be happy to have a conversation with you there. I also have, like I said, I do a lot of mentoring. I do a lot of, I love to talk with partners, in state, out of state too. We still do a lot of partnerships out of state. You can reach out to me through my email, Connor at thecourageousstepsproject.org. And you can follow us on social media to at Courageous Steps Project on Facebook or Instagram. Our handle is the Courageous Steps Project. So, there are many ways to get involved. We'd love to hear your story too. And certainly that's, hearing your stories helps us just, being able to further impact our work.
Mm. So well said. Could not have said it better myself. We need anyone who's listening, whether you're a parent, young adult, manager somewhere, no matter who you are, your role, what brings you here. If this inspired you, find that call to action. Reach out to Connor, myself, Michael at Street Smart Ventures is my email. Streetsmartventures.com. Please, the time is now to keep change going, to keep, as you said, transformation at the forefront of what we're doing. So again, Connor, just so grateful for your time, your expertise. I had a blast chatting with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Michael.
And everyone, on that note, until next time, thanks so much for listening and watching. Bye for now.